All right. Y'all ready to get smotivated? Let's do it. Anybody in here love to eat, right? Me too. All right. That means you're in the right place and you're probably surrounded by some similar people. I love to eat. It has been a part of my life and will be a part of my life for probably the rest of my life, as well as yours. It's part of the journey. So much that my my new motto in life has become happy, healthy, hungry, because I aim to be happy and I live to be healthy, but I stay hungry. So how do you balance all that out? For me, I had to actually fail my way to success on this journey. So let's talk about life and the building blocks of that journey. So life, first of all, we can all agree life is an amazing gift. It's an opportunity for us to experience our environment, to become educated with our surroundings, explore the world that we live in, and then evolve into what person that we are. But we're not born with the tools to achieve these goals. We only exist circumstantially, geographically, and influentially by something that's out of our control. It's unknown to us until a certain age. We don't get to control our gender, our race, our political beliefs, our religious beliefs. All of those things are first created without our involvement. So until we're able to control the parameters of our life, we're domesticated. And usually we're domesticated by our parents or the people who raise us, whoever that is. That's where we receive the first building blocks of who we are. We get our DNA from our bloodline and everything, and that determines a good deal of our molecular structure. But the tricky part falls on the domestication or the lifestyle of those who raise us. See, I was domesticated in a Southern Baptist consumer-driven home where it's expected for you to partake in a variety of things because of where you're from. Not to say I was raised in a bad place. Most would just refer to it as being raised in the South. And oddly enough, that would become my excuse of how I would justify my unhealthy outcome. Now, my mother, she loved to cook. She would fix a whole table full of her favorite prize-winning recipes, and as a family, we would sit down and mow through every bit of it. I mean, we would devour all the dishes, and we ate rich. We weren't rich, but we ate rich. Our menu was platefuls of high-fat, processed, gluten-filled, dairy-drizzled, deep-fried, and covered in sugar with a side of gravy type plates, and that's what we would eat every day. And we were country. We had a garden, but just because we had vegetables didn't mean that, we ate healthy. My mother learned how to cook from her mother from her mother. And honestly, there wasn't a lot that changed in that lineage. And that's kind of what the lifestyle that programmed my path to obesity. Like I was saying about the garden, just because you have vegetables doesn't mean that you're eating healthy. Once you deep fry and cover and smother a vegetable, it's not a vegetable. If you take broccoli and you cook the life out of it, you cover it in butter and cheese, like you're no longer just eating broccoli. You're using the broccoli to deliver some unhealthy ingredients. It's the same with a potato. Take a baked potato. You cover it in butter and cheese and bacon and sour cream, and where's your potato? It's at the bottom of the pile, where if you have any room in your stomach left for it, you might get to it. But most of us are always going to eat the toppings first. I know. I lived this way my whole life. And, it's the same thing when it comes to, and we'll get to this, but when it comes to meat. We eat meat thinking that that's where we got to get our protein from. Where do you think meat gets its protein from? Cows don't eat other cows. They get it from plants. So the saying strong as an ox is something to consider when thinking about this, because ox don't eat meat, So let's talk about some of the struggles along my journey. Now that you understand how you become who you become without your control. So somewhere between the ages of 9 and 10, I evolved into fat kid. And, my life was fun. my childhood was active, but it wasn't the greatest for me. My parents, they loved the shit out of me and they did anything for me. But as a child and as a teenager, I struggled with some real addiction problems. And my problem is I was addicted to food. And at the time, I didn't even have a clue. I was shopping in the Husky section of the Sears catalog and having a shop like at the Big Dog and the Big and Tall, for clothes, even as a kid, because I didn't wear standard size clothing. And I knew I was different because I couldn't do most of the exercises in gym class. I didn't achieve greatness in sports, like other kids. I couldn't even really keep up the way I wanted to when it comes to something simple like the Scouts. All I was really good at was eating food, and it was almost celebrated and encouraged, for me to do that. I remember, like, take sports, for instance, after a baseball game, it was whether we won or lost. It didn't even matter. It's not like, hey, you won the game, we're going to go out for pizza. It's like, nah, you showed up, played the game, let's go to Pizza Inn, where they had like a buffet. And, nobody cared how I played the ball game. They were more interested in how many slices of pizza can John eat. And I think I had like a standing record of like 32 slices in one sit down. And, it was like, yeah, good job, and no one ever told me to stop, so it's a really weird, thing that takes place, and for me, it was like 3 or 4 times a day I was encouraged to eat. You finish the food on your plate, and it was the most unhealthiest menus. So that was my domestication. That was my program. It's how I was raised. And that lifestyle consumed the next several decades of my life. And the food only got richer. It only got fattier. It got sweeter, more cheese. And no one ever asked me to stop or told me to stop. I was out of control. And I remember being a fat kid, but now I'm growing into the obese and unhealthy adult. It's one thing to be a fat kid, but then when you start using terms like obese, that's when you start realizing that it's problematic, and should someone have intervened? My parents, they noticed that I was becoming a fat kid, and they gave me some tools, like the Richard Simmons Deal-A-Meal and Weight Watchers, the fads that were sold. They did calorie cut and portion control, but they never really addressed the actual problem, which was the ingredients that they were using in these, in these programs that were being sold. But no, it wasn't my parents' fault. How do you think I learned my lifestyle? They were addicts too, and they didn't know any better. They were sold on the convenience of processed food. And somewhere along the line of my great-grandparents, grandparents, and parents, you heard the story, and I know my mother participated in like the wringing of the neck of the chicken and then cooking the chicken. But somewhere along the line, like KFC happened, and then, Tyson chicken happened, and then the convenience became what they sold our parents on. And they weren't even thinking about the ingredients. It was just like, oh, you pop this in the microwave and it's hungry man meal or whatever it was back in the the 80s, the microwave meal. So it wasn't their fault. And they were sold on convenience and society. At that time, you had to be accepted by your peers when it come to your consumption. So it's a real tricky psychological thing that was happening too. So nonetheless, I failed and I got fatter. And don't you know, when you're like at a weak point in your life, that's when the devil shows up. And when alcohol became part of my menu, that's when things got real tricky. Because, first of all, who doesn't enjoy a good mixed drink or several beers with their friends and family, right? So, it's a social thing. Well, drinking for me was a lot like my eating. It was excessive and it was unhealthy. And I never understood what alcohol really was, especially like when it went into your body. Alcohol is just sugar. And when you're chasing it with like Coca-Cola, then it's sugar on sugar, which is just a double dose of sweet trouble. And in my profession as an entertainer, later in life, alcohol is celebrated and promoted like at every angle. You know, it's the cornerstone of a good time, and it's junk food's evil brother. So, you know, drinking creates this domino effect of bad choices that, you know, lead to a path to destruction, especially when it comes to food. You know, when's the last time you got drunk and said, man, I'd love to have me a good old healthy salad? That never happens. You know, so I found myself more gluttonous, more sloth-like, no energy because I drank and I would eat even junkier foods. Now, when it come to performing, I was able to drink and perform because of adrenaline. You know, that just comes with my job. But as soon as I came off the stage every night, it hit me like a bag of bricks. You know, the real burden of the bad choices, the stuff that only you know about your health, the shortness of breath, always sweating for no reason, the acid reflux that controls your very existence, the uncomfortable extra body weight. You know what I'm saying? I had man boobs as a child and then through the whole time of my year. Now, if you've never been a man and had man boobs, then you won't know. But if you have, then you definitely know. So men, if you know, you know. You know, so you struggle with uncomfortable body weight. Maybe you've been there, maybe you haven't, but these are the things that led me to the biggest obstacle of my life, which was choosing my health over basically flavor. I was 39 years old and I was about to head out on this big tour up the West Coast and across Canada. And most people in my line of work would say this was like a dream come true. And it was, but it was different for me at the time because I remember feeling like I was nervous and excited, but I also knew something was wrong. I was loading the bus with my band, and it's like right before we left, I noticed I had this tightness in my chest, and I was like, it's anxiety. You know, you got all this stuff on the line and all these people that are counting on you. It's just nerves, and you're just anxious. Well, you know, that's not what it was. It felt like a gorilla was standing on top of my chest, and this was new and very scary for me. And so I continued night after night, city after state, same meals, same bad habits, still feeling like crap. And that's when I noticed that if I don't make a change, then there will be, like, if you don't make a change, you're not going to get any results. So if I was looking to feel better, I was going to have to do something. And this is when, much like when alcohol came into my life and I knew the devil was there, this is when God stepped in and he delivered my bus driver, Mike Lowry. Now, you can read about Mike Lowry in my autobiography, The Book of Smo, which if you haven't, keep in mind, it's like the pre-vegan docu-bio of the life that I've been explaining up until this point. Anyway, Mike came into my life like Jesus. He was sent to me right at a time when I needed him the most. And we had become very close over the years working together. He was my bus driver. He was my security guard. He was like my shadow. And we shared some incredible experiences on the road. But my point being is that he knew me. He knew me every day, all day. Now, Mike knew that I had a problem. He suggested meal prep approach, you know, to dial in the daily consumption with some caloric boundaries and some basic food restrictions. You know, no more junk food off the rip. So just these healthy meals and these approved snacks that he had for me. And I noticed that I was dropping some weight, a couple pounds. First few weeks, I was like, hey, man, this is not bad. But the chest discomfort was still there and it was controlling my daily activities. So we wasn't getting ahead of the problem. So Mike made me a cardiology appointment at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And we was coming out of Canada into Minnesota. And he pulled up at the tour bus and dropped me off, let me go in and get checked out. And it wasn't long after I walked into the doors of that facility that I would have to have a quadruple bypass open heart surgery. And the choice to change my life had just become my number one priority. I didn't have a choice. My surgeon made me promise to change a number of habits before he would even operate. He was like, yo, no more drinking, no more red meat or pork, no more fried foods, no more soda. You have to like hold yourself accountable for some of these things. And I was like, yo, these are some serious changes that you're shooting off here, man. And he's like, hey, man, these things could cost you your life. So I didn't have a choice but to agree to the terms and go under the knife. Well, I woke up hours later, of course, in the ICU, feeling like I just got hit by a truck. But at the same time, I could tell that I felt better, like instantly. I felt better. The pressure on my chest, even though I have a 13-inch scar down my chest, the pressure was gone. And, you know, the feeling better is what would become my fuel for survival, because how else could I make myself feel better? And after several years of controlling the foods that I ate, and for the first time in my life, like really loving myself, I started to feel these changes. So this leads into the future of my domestication, you know, like where I had to reprogram myself. So I was 390 pounds at my biggest. I dropped 100 pounds off the first several years of right after my heart surgery. I was down 100 pounds. I wasn't exercising, but I was feeling better because, I mean, being under 300 had been like a goal for a long time. I didn't have any chest pain for the first time. And also for the first time since I was a kid, I was sober. You know, I hadn't been sober my whole life. And so quitting drinking alcohol, not smoking tobacco, participating in anything other, you know, I'm Cali sober. You Google that. That's what I am. But even the changes that I had made, like I had hit a wall and I was stuck. Still taking medication to control the acid reflux, the blood pressure, the cholesterol, like all the stuff that came with the heart surgery and all that. I was still sick and I was still very much unhappy with my health. Luckily, around this time is when I met the real love of my life. And it's when I met my wife, Sarah Beth. And she shared the same domestication and Southern upbringing as me. So she understood, and she drank the hell out of alcohol at the time as well. She was also searching for the better version of herself. And, you know, we found something that worked together. Well, she found it. I followed, much like that's how our life goes. She happens to be smarter than me. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But this is when we had to choose our happiness. Well, for me, it was my happiness over my pride. And now, well, for her too, because she's proud of who she is and where she come from. I've always been proud of who I am and where I come from. That'll never change. I was raised country, and I embrace every aspect of my heritage. It is what it is. You know, I was doing a lot of, you know, like hunting, fishing. It's all part of country living. And well, I was taking this group of wounded warriors out on a duck hunt in West Tennessee at Reelfoot Lake. And this year, this is like our fourth year. This year it was my turn to bring some of the ducks home and get to cook them. Little did I know, while we were out hunting and blowing these birds out of the sky, Sarah Beth is at home getting educated on a plant-based lifestyle via the Netflix documentary, The Game Changers. So I come home, I got ducks, I'm ready to cook up the keel, feast on the fresh meat, you know, and she breaks the news to me. She's like, yo, I'm going vegan. And I was like what? I'm blown away by this. I'm like, yo, our refrigerator and freezer is packed full of animals, by the way. You know, we've got deer and cow and chicken and fish, like everything. And I got a truck full of ducks that are still bleeding in the bed of the truck. What is this nonsense that you speak of, woman? She did, and then she just told me, she said, you watch the show and then you decide. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I can debunk this, you know, and victoriously reclaim the main ingredient of my daily menu. I'll keep my meat, you know. So I sat down with skepticism, of course, and committed to watching the program. Shockingly, I could relate to about 90% of the content. I mean, it was real. I'm stubborn, but I'm not stupid. So I have to at least admit that it was real. You know, the information they were sharing, it was kind of news to me. I had never considered the perspective of not consuming animal products. You know, my brain couldn't even imagine my favorite menus that I would have to say no to, the restaurants, the events, the life as I know it, is all about to change because of this one choice. So it was like a big attack on my pride because, this is my lifestyle. This is my heritage. It's my domestication. And, it's going to be hard. And it takes some real self-discipline and, to do something like this. You can't just say you're going to do it, and without the discipline to keep you committed to these changes, because it's different. And you got to be hungry for the change. You got to like really want the change. You have got to be, like for me, it was heart surgery. For other people, it's like, they went from wearing a XL to a 5X and they're like, yo, this, I want this change. So you got to be hungry for the change. You got to be more hungry for the change than for the cheeseburger. That's where you got to that's when you find your self-discipline. And people who are disciplined will do whatever it takes today to have the things that they dream of tomorrow. And that's not easy. It's hard. Life doesn't get any harder than being labeled a weirdo for making better choices for your health. Like that's a tough spot to be in. The challenge of removing yourself from the expected social interaction. Think about the normal shit that you would do, dinner with friends, drive through, pick up some food, being able to snack anywhere that they got a spread laying out. Like these things don't get to happen anymore. So don't think that it's easy, because it's not. But if you have the tools and you have the discipline, then you definitely have the time to heal yourself. So you think about the time you spend driving to a restaurant, waiting on someone to take your order, waiting on someone to prepare your food. Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't, but you definitely consumed your time and your money. Now think about the doctor's visits that you spend, the time on doctor's visits, the money you spend on medication, the discomfort you allow to consume your life because of the poor choices that you make with what you consume. These things are expensive and they eat up your time. So what kind of relationship do you have with the things that you consume if you don't even take part in preparing them? So that's something to consider. How do you know what kind of ingredients you're putting in your body if you're not the one controlling the menu? No one's going to change your life for you but you. There's not a potato chip police or a soda pop soldier keeping you from making these poor choices at the grocery store. You have to hold yourself accountable for what you allow to go into your buggy before you allow it to go into your body. Do this. Next time you're at the grocery store, take a look at some of the people walking around, look at what's in their buggy, then look at the people, right? Most of the time, these choices reflect on the people that are pushing them around, because your choices are a direct reflection of who you are or who you allow yourself to be. So let's talk about the menu change. This is how we get from where we were to where we're going. And this was what I had to do. First of all, when you become vegan, you got to remove, it's like 5 things. You got red meat, pork, fish, poultry, dairy, eggs. It's like 6 things. So 2 of the 6 things I had already taken off my menu. Red meat and pork, gone. Because I had made the deal with my surgeon, I would stop eating that. I did still eat deer meat up until this point, but that too had to go. Now, the part that was hard was saying goodbye to eggs, cheese, and milk. I didn't realize that I ate 90 eggs a month. I'd eat a 3-egg omelet every day with a handful of turkey sausage and another handful of Tillamook cheese, and omelet that up, put it on a tortilla shell, hit it with some Miracle Whip, and like that was my breakfast. That was as soon as I'd wake up, I wouldn't even take a shower. I wouldn't get dressed. I'd go straight to the kitchen. And that's what I'd cook. So saying goodbye to eggs, cheese, and milk, that was hard. I didn't realize how addicted to food that I was until I tried to stop eating some of the foods that I had become so dependent on. And they put these ingredients in everything. Like eggs, cheese, and milk, it's in everything. Stuff that you wouldn't even imagine. Next was chicken, turkey, and fish. Now, this was really hard. Because you rely on the convenience of these foods and their availability on a daily, almost hourly basis, because you can always go to like a chicken sandwich or a turkey something or a fish stick, or, even if you don't eat red meat or pork, you still had these other proteins to choose from. And, you really depend on these. So you remove all that. And it's like, so well, what do you eat? Well, you got rabbit food? Now, well, at first, it was as gluttonous as the previous menu because my first vegan meal was a plant-based buffalo chicken sandwich with plant-based cheese on a toasted bun with vegan eggs. And I mean, it was delicious. I'm not gonna lie. Wasn't bad at all. And I was like, man, I can do this. Then it was the impossible this, the beyond that. I mean, hell, Oreos and French fries are vegan. And it wasn't long before we started to get vegan fat, which is basically still a high processed junk food diet. And, you got to know just because it says vegan or plant-based doesn't make it healthy. So we had to go deeper. We removed processed foods completely. No more packaged foods, no more fake meat. And we went whole food plant-based. After we did that, like 3 days after we did that, I stopped having acid reflux. After 6 months, the acid reflux medication, gone. After a year, I was off of all my medications with my heart doctor's approval. And he told me, he said, Smo, if all my patients did what you're doing, I would gladly be out of a job. And that's when I knew that I had found the power to heal myself. It wasn't surgery. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't a trip out to the jungle for ayahuasca, even though that sounds fun. It was changing the things that I put into my body. The phrase, you are what you eat, comes to mind when reflecting on this. So simple, yet so hard. And it took some real self-discipline that I didn't even know I had. Next, we removed gluten and oil, which I guess that's when we switched to mostly raw organic. Yeah, we did like a gluten-free, oil-free, and then we switched to mostly raw foods at one time. Now, was the move that set us up for some incredible results. And I bet you're thinking, well, now what do you eat? Well, anything in the produce section, fruits, vegetables, nuts, as long as they're raw, beans, as long as it didn't have, if it didn't have gluten, if it was vegan, oil-free, gum-free is another thing. Gums, that was another tough one because we did different kind of nut milks for a long time. We don't even do nut milks anymore. I'll tell you about banana milk at the end. Somebody asked me about banana milk. I'll fill you in. But we eat a lot of fresh fruit smoothies. We drink celery juice every day. We eat a big salad every day. We have our own homemade dressing that we make. And other than that, your banana, apple, handful of grapes, blueberries, sunflower, pumpkin seeds, you eat stuff like that all day, and you realize that you don't need this big variety of all these foods. And you really got to realize that food is just fuel. It's not a reward. You'll start looking at food differently. And we're domesticated to think that eating food is this celebratory part of every occasion that we must indulge in. It's like my family can barely get together without having 10 dishes on the table for everybody to eat. It's hard, you know what I'm saying? And who needs a cake every year to celebrate one's birth? I mean, that's weird to me now looking back at it. It's like, let me guarantee that I keep you hooked on sugar every year by making you eat this cake, and making it seem like, hey, don't worry, you'll do it again next year. And don't worry, you can do it all year in between. We've been programmed to believe holidays revolve around the sacrifice of certain animals, based off of our domestication or history. It's all a scam, and we all fell for it. And it's not our fault that we found ourselves here, but it is our fault if we decide not to change for our health and our happiness. Now, the hard moments and the struggles that I went through, let me tell you, it's not easy. I have thrown full-blown grown man temper tantrums in the middle of Kroger, Sprouts, and Walmart. Every time there's another product that I can't have because of a certain ingredient. It's crazy how much stuff they put in all of this stuff. Let's take nuts, for instance. I mean, who don't love them, right? Roasted and salted, I could eat them by the bag. But if you're eating roasted, salted nuts, you're also consuming 3 different kinds of added oil, which at that point, like, what are you really eating? You're eating more oil than you're eating nut. And some people think that oil is good for you. I think different, because at the end of the day, oil's just fat, and fat's not good for you. I mean, there are some healthy fats, but oil fat, I would probably argue, is not good. And if you haven't tried to stop eating oil, or you can't stop eating oil, maybe there's some addictive things to think about in that as well, you know. But it's hard. It's hard to make a healthy choice, but it's also hard as hell to be fat. Living unhappy and unhealthy, that's what's hard. But there is a silver lining to the whole thing. There are some real rewards. So you think about your worst day, your hardest times, sluggish moments in your life, you know, the dreams that you can't achieve because your health is getting in the way. I'll tell you a quick story. I took my kids to Disneyland, and first thing we came to was this giant ride that sends you way up in the sky and drops you down. Standing in line for over an hour with my kids. Get them all on there, get them all buckled in. I sit down, go to buckle in. My buckle don't click. I'm too big to ride this ride with my kids. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, this is something that's keeping me from, like, you know, living my life and being happy. So you have to know that changing your lifestyle can and will change your life. I'm living, breathing, thriving proof that you can do it. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. That is a fact. If you want to feel better, you got to eat better. If you want to be stronger, you're going to have to exercise. If you want to be smarter, you got to live smarter, right? You got to start with these things you got to start with the things that you allow yourself to consume. And it's not just food. It's the entertainment that you take in every day. It's the social media crap that you are glued to all day long. It's the people that you keep around you. Like, these are the influences that affect our real lives. You need to know that everything that you consume matters. So you need to embrace yourself and the ability that you have to become a new you, because you have the time and you have the ability to heal yourself. So let's walk into this new life that you're going to go into. I want you to look at yourself like the restaurant that you're going to be dining at for the rest of your life. And it's filled with all the flavors that support this new and healthy you. So I suggest a simple task of rebranding your menu. Your menu is what you buy at the grocery store and allow yourself to eat. That's what you buy at the grocery store goes in the kitchen. What's in the kitchen gets put on the menu. What's on the menu gets put on the plate. That's how it works. You know, so look at your food like fuel for your car. But imagine if your car's performance, if your life depended on your car's performance. Now you're going to start really paying attention to what kind of fuel you put in. You're going to start looking at the water that you put in, the coolant, what you use to clean the interior, what you use to wax the exterior. Now all of it matters because your life depends on it. You have to treat yourself better than you treat your car, basically. You need to treat yourself like a god, like treat your body like a temple, I think is what they say. And the menu is what helps hold yourself accountable to these conscious changes that you want to make in order to become the new you. So if you allow yourself to buy crappy food, then you will allow yourself to eat crappy food. But if you buy healthy foods, then you won't have any crap to choose from. So I suggest removing all foods that are like unquestionably bad for you in your lifestyle. You start off small. Remove one menu item each week, replace it with something healthy, a healthy substitute. Soon you'll see that the menu change, and as it changes, so will you, and you'll feel better. Because when you know better, you do better, and when you do better, you feel better, right? And before you know it, your menu will reflect the person that you want to be, not the person that you've been programmed to be. This is a new you that's waiting. So we all have a new us waiting inside of us, but only we can give that version of us life. So, who is ready to get smotivated?